I froze before I even reached the door. The polished marble of the hotel lobby reflected the grandeur of the evening, but all I could see was the storm inside me. Tonight was supposed to be the celebration of our love, my fiancée Lila and I finally stepping into forever. Instead, my stomach churned as a single sentence from earlier in the week replayed in my mind, relentless. I invited my ex to the wedding. If you loved me, you'd understand. I remember the moment she told me. Her lips curved in that infuriating mix of apology and smugness, as if she were proud of herself. I had blinked at her, stunned, words lodged somewhere between disbelief and fury. I tried to reason, to sound reasonable, but the words caught in my throat. You invited him. My voice sounded thin and foreign even to me. Yes, she said lightly, as if she were talking about a neighbor who borrowed sugar. I wanted to make peace with my past. If you loved me, you'd understand. I nodded slowly, every fiber of me screaming against compliance. I understand, I said finally, my voice measured, calm, too calm. I didn't trust myself to speak otherwise. And in that moment, I decided I would find my own way to even the field. The weeks leading up to the wedding were a haze of floral arrangements, tuxedo fittings, and the deafening background music of wedding playlists. Lila floated through it all with a detached excitement I couldn't touch. She laughed easily at jokes, called everyone darling, and yet behind that perfectly curated exterior, something gnawed at me. It was late one night, as I sat alone in our apartment surrounded by unopened wedding invites, that the idea came to me. If she could invite her ex, who I knew had once meant the world to her, then perhaps I could find my own quiet justice. I knew who would appreciate it, who would shock her as much as she had me. His wife. I found her number with a meticulousness bordering on obsession. Every detail mattered. Every syllable of the message I drafted had to convey sincerity without aggression. I could feel my pulse racing as I hit send. Hi, I know this is unusual. My fiancé is inviting your husband to our wedding, and I wanted to offer you a +1 as my guest. You deserve to see this too. The reply came quickly. Her tone was wary, tinged with disbelief, but the undercurrent of anger and hurt mirrored mine. Are you serious? She wrote. You're not wrong, but this is bold. I smiled at my phone. Bold wasn't the word. Perfect was. The wedding day arrived in a blur of white lace and anxious butterflies. Guests filled the grand ballroom, their laughter and clinking glasses a soundtrack to my internal storm. Lila moved through them effortlessly, radiant, oblivious. I watched from a distance, my hands buried in my pockets, the calm mask I wore cracking only when I saw him. Her ex, standing beside her, holding her hand as if the years had never happened. And then I saw her. His wife, my uninvited but now utterly justified guest, standing at the entrance of the ballroom with a quiet, dignified composure. She scanned the room, and when her eyes met mine, there was an unspoken pact. This was going to be a night remembered. Dinner passed in a blur of polite conversation and careful observation. Lila's laughter sounded sharper now, edged with something I couldn't quite place. Was it guilt? Or merely anticipation of the chaos she thought she had orchestrated? I sat beside his wife, Eleanor, and we exchanged subtle glances, each one carrying a silent acknowledgement of betrayal, of shared indignation. We didn't speak much because words were unnecessary. Her presence was enough. It was a quiet reminder that nothing in life is ever perfectly in your control. When the music began, the first dance announced with all the pomp of tradition, I could see Lila searching for me. But my gaze never left Eleanor. She slid her hand into mine, her touch firm, grounding, an anchor in the storm I had been navigating alone. For the first time in weeks, I felt the flicker of something resembling peace. The pivotal moment came as Lila's ex attempted to lean closer, whispering something I couldn't hear but knew was meant to charm. She leaned back, giggling, but then froze. Her eyes flicked across the room and landed on the pair of us. Eleanor and me side by side, an unspoken force field of dignity and quiet defiance. The shock on her face was instantaneous. I had never seen her falter like that, and a small, cold satisfaction settled in my chest. The realization that the power dynamic had shifted, subtly, irreversibly, was intoxicating. Dinner ended, toasts were given, and the crowd began to dissipate into dancing. I could see the tension building in her, a cocktail of embarrassment and anger. She approached me finally, attempting casual conversation. "You invited her." Lila's voice trembled just slightly, betraying the composure she tried so hard to maintain. "I did," I said simply, keeping my tone light, almost indifferent. "She deserves to be here, don't you think?" Her jaw tightened. "You don't understand. It's not. It's complicated." "I understand more than you think," I replied, letting the weight of the words settle. She opened her mouth, probably to argue, but no words came. Later that night, as the party dwindled, I found myself standing at the balcony, Eleanor beside me. The city lights stretched endlessly below, the noise of the ballroom a muted echo behind us. "Thank you," she said quietly, her eyes reflecting the lights. "You didn't have to do this." "I did," I replied. "Because some lessons need to be learned the hard way." She nodded, understanding. There was no malice in her voice, only the bittersweet acknowledgement of what had been stolen, and what had been returned, if only in principle. The final confrontation came after the last guests had left. Lila found me in the empty ballroom, the floor sticky with spilled champagne, confetti drifting lazily like guilty thoughts. She stood stiffly, her bouquet dangling from her fingers. "I can't believe you," she said finally, voice tight. You humiliated me." "I didn't humiliate you," I replied, stepping closer, voice calm but unwavering. "I simply leveled the playing field. You brought someone from your past into my life, uninvited and unapologetic. I responded in kind." Her eyes glistened with unshed tears, and for a moment I saw the girl I had fallen in love with, the girl who had laughed at my terrible jokes, who had held my hand during storms, who had whispered promises under the stars. But she was gone now, replaced by someone I didn't recognize, someone whose selfishness had been masked by charm and manipulation. You think this changes everything?" she asked, voice trembling. "I think it changes you," I said softly. "And maybe me too. But mostly, it changes how we move forward, separately." I left the ballroom with Eleanor at my side, not as a conquest, not as revenge, but as a witness to the justice of a night that had unveiled every hidden truth. Lila remained behind, standing among the empty tables and abandoned flowers, a figure of heartbreak I had once known intimately. We didn't speak on the drive home. The silence was heavy, but for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel the weight of anger pressing down on me. It was gone, replaced with clarity. The clarity that comes only after betrayal has been confronted, acknowledged, and allowed to breathe its own consequences. Weeks later, as I moved into my own apartment, away from the reminders of a life built on illusions, I reflected on the night. Lila had called once, pleading for a conversation, an explanation, some sliver of reconciliation. I didn't answer. Not because I didn't care, but because I finally understood. Care isn't about forgiving betrayal. Care is about knowing when to step away. Eleanor and I stayed in touch, slowly, carefully, like two survivors finding solace in shared understanding. There was no romantic promise, not yet, but there was trust, and that was enough. I realized then that love is never as simple as weddings, vows, or even grand gestures. Sometimes love is knowing when to stand firm, when to protect your dignity, and when to let someone else witness the consequences of their choices. And sometimes love is quietly, fiercely, insisting that your heart deserves better. The day came when I finally deleted Lila's number from my phone, the final severing of the cord that had tied me to her deceit. I breathed deeply, feeling the weight lift, and for the first time in months, I smiled without reservation. Life, I understood, would go on. And so would I, wiser, stronger, and unburdened by the shadows of betrayal. Some wounds never fully disappear, but some lessons last a lifetime. And that night, under the chandeliers, In the glare of truth and consequence, I had learned mine.